Right, good morning everyone. And if we can all take our seats. Just a couple of sort of house notices. Phones onto silent, please, so we don't get an interrupt. And if there's a fire alarm, well, I'll just jump out the window, I guess. Right, it's my pleasure to introduce Mark Haynes, M0DXR. Introduce Mark. Is there any contester who doesn't know Mark?
I don't.
Oh, right, okay. SO2R and microwave, that's going to be fascinating.
Well, I'll do everything.
Right, and Mark just amazed me in the fact he's been licensed 22 years. And most of us can remember him when he first got licensed, so that's a real thing. Anyway, Mark's going to talk about SO2R, so over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for coming. Lovely to see a wonderful turnout. Appreciate you coming along and offering your support, and maybe hope to learn something as well. I'm hoping to learn something, actually. It'd be interesting to see what's on these slides. So, as Chris said, thank you, Chris, for the introduction. I'm here to talk about SO2R, single operator 2 radio, which is all about contesting and maximizing efficiency in a contest. So, of course, over the years, technology has advanced a huge amount over the past 15, 20 years. We've seen it come a long way, and that's offered operators the opportunity to increase their productivity in a contest. And contests are becoming a lot more competitive now than they ever used to be. So bring those two things together, it allows for a very interesting combination of resources to make SO2R possible. So the scope of this presentation is to have a look about the evolution of SO2R, where it's come from, where we think it might be going, where it is today. Emphasize the point that everybody's setup in an SO2R contest environment is likely to be different, and that is down to hardware preferences and personal preferences on how you actually execute that SO2R, because there are probably an infinite number of ways it can be done. But we'll have a look at a few of the more popular examples. Spatial awareness, emphasizing the importance of that. And some people like to use 2 keyboards for the 2 separate radios. We'll have a little look at the arrangement that's possible. Ergonomics, of course, is important. When you're 47 hours into a 48-hour contest, then ergonomics becomes exceptionally important, where tiredness and fatigue tends to kick in. Running dual pile-ups, so there are many different approaches to SO2R. SO2R can be running on one band and then searching on another, but more recently it's become popular to run on 2 bands at the same time. So we'll have a look a little bit about how that's done. Ideas on how to improve rate, because at the end of the day, rate is what makes for greater points, but they have to be the right QSOs and the right rate into the right parts of the world. So I'm not going to be looking to show you how to set up hardware or software. We'll have a look at the different setups that are possible. This is more about how to maximize your setup to its full potential. So what is SO2R? So generally speaking, is where you have more than one radio, 2 radios, hence the title, although there is somebody that has been playing with SO3R, but there is a point at which it becomes a lot less productive and can be more harmful. So we're looking at 2 radios. One operator uses 2 radios at the same time. We'll look at the various ways of how to accomplish that. Some examples, well, there are different combinations, so you can have 2 radios and 1 computer, 2 radios and 2 computers, or a single radio with 2 receivers, a single radio with 2 receivers and transmitters. So there's these different combinations. Flex radio, of course, with SO2R is being looked at this year, in fact. So it'll be interesting to see how SO2R in the SDR environment will come. I think there are people starting to do that now. Earliest known Cabrillo log, as shown here. Right, so a little bit of history. So SO2R was actually first documented in 1952 by a US operator, W4KFC. wonder what he ate during his contest. In the 1970s, some of the US contesters used two radios connected to a single keyer, which is now not allowed. The German guy, DK3GI, won the Christmas Sprint with 100 watts and two radios in 1993. In 1999, Lima Yankee 6 Mike set a new European record, single up all band high power, which was using SO2R. But it's surprising the number of Europeans that are not SO2Ring, but compared to the number that are in the US. In the United States, it's very commonplace. So not quite sure why that is. Maybe we need to try a bit harder. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit more difficult from the US to run the populated areas of the world. So there used to be much more, the emphasis used to on SO2R, it used to be achieved more about hardware changing. So that was before computer logging made it a lot more simple. There used to be a device called the Ultimate Sprinter. Has anyone heard of that? It was like a telephone switchboard which allowed you to change bands and antennas from one radio to the other. It looked a little bit like this. So this is a picture of the Ultimate Sprinter. It is like an old telephone switchboard where you can change bands for up to 4 or 5 radios, and was used in a multi-operator, multi-transmitter contest environment, and was later tested on SO2R. But obviously this is incredibly time consuming, and you have to weigh up whether actually bothering with all of this is actually, at the end of the day, produces more result. So this is a very early SO2R box, which would allow you to switch between left radio, right radio, and both radios simultaneously. Very simple, and still is used today. This is how the audio switching is for a very simple solution. So you have switches which control left radio and right radio into stereo headphones. Stereo headphones, of course, very important so that you get left radio in the left ear, right radio in the right ear. Or it's possible now these days to mix them so that you have both radios out of both ears, but it depends on what the operator preference is. I think for me personally, having one radio on the left, another radio on the right is quite a nice distinction between the two. So this is a simple SO2R setup. So filters are very important, of course, so that when you're transmitting on one band, you're not hearing it on the other band, or as least as possible. There's always going to be some harmonic interference between the two from, for example, 7 megs up to 20 megs. So frequency selection there is very important. Perhaps on 7 megs run high in the CW segment, on 14 megs run low, so that you're away from the harmonic. But this is a basic setup for a 100 watt station, pair of stations. So you've got the antennas which come into an antenna switch, 100 watt filters, obviously before the power amplifiers if you're choosing to run amps. Band decoders which allow the antenna, the correct antenna and filter to be selected when you change band on the radio. And then of course radio control by 2 computers. And for CW you've got your CW interface and a PTT lockout between the 2 stations. So the rules in the main contests, such as CQ Worldwide, ARRL, WPX, they're all, for a single operator, it's only one transmitted signal at any one time. So it's a violation if you're transmitting in 2 places at the same time. Therefore, a PTT lockout is a very good idea because it only allows you to transmit in one place at one time.
Mark, if you send your call signs slowly, can you interleave them?
Try it. Possibilities are endless. So if you have no SO2R box, this is an example by 85X for a simple lockout. I don't know whether that's visible at the back of the room, but that can be provided at the end. Slightly more complex. SO2R, why is it important? Well, at the end of the day, in a contest, you're trying to make as many QSOs as possible, so the rate is king. There's no wasted time while CQing, so you're increasing your rate. So receive time is taken up by transmitting somewhere else. So you're minimizing the amount of time that you are not transmitting. You're present on 2 bands at once, therefore you're increasing rate. Dual pile-ups increase your rate, of course. That's more popular recently. And of course, the last point there, rate. It really comes down to practice. It's taken me years, and I'm still learning now on how to make it more efficient. But at the end of the day, it is a lot of practice and a lot of contests. There are ways that you can practice, for example, using a program called Morse Runner, produced by VE3NEA, which is a contest CW simulator that allows you to call CQ and you get random call signs that come back to you. And it's very realistic because you can introduce QRM, QSB on this simulating software. So I would highly recommend using Morse Runner. Morse Runner on 2 computers, perhaps with the audio coming in and you can switch around. Very realistic. So the logging software M1MM has the capability to log using Morse Runner as well. So that's an interesting thing to try. But the easiest way to practice is, of course, to get on the air and actually get in the contests. So basic SO2R may be calling CQ on one radio, but just searching around for other stations on the second radio and trying to do that in between QSOs, perhaps, first of all, then trying to do it between transmissions, and then actually trying to transmit on the second radio in between an exchange with another station on the first radio. So there are different stages that you can slowly develop your practice and your skills. Spatial awareness is really important. So knowing where your station, every part of your station is located, knowing where the radios are, knowing where the tuning knob is, knowing where you can switch between left and right if that's your hardware. PCs at eye level, always a very good idea. Amplifiers, obviously auto-tune amplifiers, if you choose to use them, is going to be a lot quicker on band changes. But knowing your way around is exceptionally important, and more importantly, knowing how to do that after 40 hours. So there are a number of logging software programs which support SO2R. These are the more popular ones. So N1MM+, WinTest, and WriteLog. And not trying to recommend any logging program over the other, but it's just to show you that there is software available depending on operator preference. I'll just give a few examples now of the various SO2R devices which are available on the market. This is one produced by Top 10 Devices, LPT Control, the DX Doubler. And then we have the Microham Micro 2R. I've used one of these both at Costa Rica at TI5W and also at Chris Danby's place, G0DWV, although I think it was the Mark 2R Plus. But they are a little bit challenging to get set up because there are so many options and so many configurations that you can set this thing up for your personal preference that it takes a little while to get used to it. But when it is set up, it works very well and gets you through the contest quite well. There's a kit for SO2R available. This is by K1XM OTRSP. So it's possible to build your own. This is the Interface Genius by 4 Oscar 3 Alpha. This is a LAN-based SO2R solution. It's exceptionally powerful and again highly configurable. So it communicates through LAN, and the Interface Genius will allow full audio and keying control of each radio using 2 computers. So it says here that there's no trouble with lockouts or other boxes being needed. So it's quite well self-contained. So the ergonomics is very important. So it's important to keep your hands on the keyboard as much as possible. And I know that there are operators that find it difficult to talk and type at different times. So, for instance, if you get called by W1AAA, it's difficult to type W1AAA, go back to him, and you've already entered it in, you're concentrating somewhere else, but actually giving him the report. So that all takes practice, but keeping your hands on the keyboards and moving between keyboards like this takes practice, but it's very important. You can use foot switches to emulate keys, so for instance, you can actually program CW messages to be exchanged by using the foot switches. So a pre-programmed message automatically sent by a foot switch allows you to concentrate somewhere else, and it allows you to do more with these important things. Keeping the radios close is obviously very important, because access to the VFO and the controls of the radio is imperative. So keeping those radios very close is important. Sometimes I know that operators like to angle them, roughly 30 or 40 degrees off facing the operator. That can be good. And it also would be good to run the same radio on each side. Not only does it make interfacing to all of the switch boxes and band decoders and amplifiers more straightforward because it's standard, but it also means that you're not constantly trying to find where the noise blanker or the noise reduction is on two different radios. Familiarity after several hours into a contest is invaluable. So as we say, monitors, always a good idea to have them at eye level to reduce strain. It can become very uncomfortable if you're having to move like this during the contest, because it's such a long period of time. And again, just emphasising the importance of spatial awareness with the radios and monitors. So macros, very useful. One thing that I've been playing with over the past couple of contests is actually programming F8 and F9 controls for RIT. So not having to actually reach for the radio, thinking, oh, which radio am I on at the moment? I can't. Ugh. And you just use F8, F9, and you can tune in the guy. So that's an example. But you can do all sorts of things. Your digital voice keyer, your enter-sense messages, controlling your Elecraft K3, for instance. You can do all of this using macros and scripts. And Bob, N6TV, one of the Wintest guys, has actually produced some examples on that website. So that's a good thing to have a look at. N1MM is an exceptional piece of software for making it configurable with these sort of things. So that is a good piece of software to use. So the advantages of using two computers or two keyboards, I would highly recommend it from my personal experience. Having that distinction between the two stations, having two PCs and two keyboards is always a good thing, I think, because when you get tired, you need clear distinction. A lot of SO2R operators are running one PC with one keyboard, and they have a way of switching between the two stations. But it does open up possible problems. It also means that if you have a PC problem and one PC crashes, you've still got the log available on the other PC, and you can continue making QSOs while you reboot the other one, perhaps. So there are lots of examples of running two. I would always recommend that. It also means that, of course, when you're running two pile-ups, that you can queue QSOs. So, for instance, if you hear a partial of a call sign over here, type it in over here, you maybe work this guy, and as soon as you start typing on this keyboard again, the logging screen will change, and you're on that radio. But it means that you can put call signs in on each one and come back to them. Whereas if you're running just one, that is not really quite as possible. And you've got no chance of entering calls in the wrong window, you'd like to think. If you've got audio coming out of left and right, they should match the left and right keyboard. As we've said, if something fails on one computer, you can continue logging on the other. You've got probably no chance, but a very minimal chance of losing your log. And it's happened to me a couple of times in the past where you're so far in the contest. But PCs are a lot more reliable these days, but it can happen. Actually, I was operating in Costa Rica last year, and the power in that part of the world is not too reliable, and you can pretty much guarantee that during the contest you'll get some sort of blip. Usually it can be instant, it can go out and come back within a few seconds, or it can go out and come back within 10 or 15 minutes. So the owner of the station, Kamal N3KS, has put in an inline generator so that when the power goes out, generator kicks in and keeps all the station running. But in order to keep the PCs going for that time between the power going out and the generator kicking in, which takes 1 or 2 seconds, there are a couple of UPS devices that keep the laptops going. But of course, during the contest, this power cut lasted about an hour and a half, and that wasn't enough time for the UPS devices to keep the logs going, and the generator failed. So there was no way, and then just as at the point at which UPS was not allowing me to run 100 watts anymore, the power came back. But it's just a good example of, if it's going to go wrong, it will go wrong during a contest. It absolutely will. So, as we've said, a hardware lockout is required to prevent 2 signals at once. That is really important, actually. There have been a number of operators that have been penalised and actually disqualified from CQ Worldwide by being present in 2 places at one time. Some of it's deliberate, some of it is actually people wanting to work 2 stations at the same time, exactly the same time. But if you introduce a hardware lockout, then it minimises all the possibilities of problems. So, for M1MM Plus and WinTest, they now have dual keyboard capability. So that's really good. The logging software guys have fixed that and realised that it's a really important feature for serious SO2R operators. So as we've said, whichever keyboard you type on, it automatically enters the information on that band. So X keys, has anyone heard of X keys? Yeah, very useful. There are some X key devices available which allow you to configure various things. So you can introduce macros for key simulations. You can redefine your computer keys. And as I mentioned, foot switches can be used for centering messages. So X keys, so these are some of the programmable key devices. So you can connect these by USB, and it just makes life a lot easier. So I've got a picture in a little while of an X keys device which allows you to select left, right and both, and various combinations of audio switching. ESM, enter sends message. Personally, I don't like ESM, but in an SO2R environment it can be useful. So this is where the logging program is following the sequence of messages which you're sending to make a QSO. So rather than having to press F1, F2, F3 or insert followed by a log and send a TU message, ESM means you just press one key and it sends the next message in the sequence of the QSO. So this was introduced by N6TR in Trilog initially. Most of the logging software has this feature. Most of them have this feature now. It is quite configurable, but it can take some of the control away from the operator. So, for instance, if a guy comes back and asks for a repeat, ESM will automatically think you want to say goodbye because it's not clever enough to know that. But that's where you can have the option of using the function keys as well to cut in there. And you can use the X keys foot switches to emulate the enter key, as mentioned. Frees up your hands to do other things, of course. Minimizing what you have to do is always usually a good thing. But of course, if you're constantly using these foot switches, after an hour, 2 hours, 48 hours, leg cramps. Yeah, so this is an example of dual foot switches for enter sends message. yeah, this is the X Keys headphone switch. So with that OT-RSP device I showed earlier, so it allows you to configure that device, for instance, with this X Keys device for sending or using it to control configured things. So just to have a look at some stations now then to see some different examples. So amplifiers, they're probably the things here that you would use the least, so they're stacked on the top. And then you've got two radios here, one stacked on top of the other vertically. Single PC. And yeah, note the remote tuning knob here. So it actually allows you to not have to reach over the keyboard, danger of hitting the keys, and the radio above as well. That's N9RV, that's Pat's station. So, slightly more with my preference actually. Here we have UR0MC, a big contester. This is his SO2R station. So two completely separate stations. They're both identical, they're both Elecraft K3s. Two keyboards, one left, one right. Two monitors, two keyboards. Look at all those wires going on behind them. Scary, isn't it? But that is a nice, you know, it's very simple, nowhere near as much hardware as the previous. So it's nice and simple. So this is a good friend of mine, N2NT, his station. This shows that a lot of it comes down to operator preference, but so you've got monitors here, 3 monitors. Is this a good idea how this is set out? Possibly not. No, that's going to introduce strain after several hours. 2 different CW paddles, one left, one right. So AA5AU, Don, has written an excellent primer for RTTY SO2R. And of course, RTTY is quite ideal for SO2R actually, because you have decoding call signs on each monitor. And you can see the call signs, you just click on it and send the report, click on it, send the report. So actually, SO2R in an RTTY environment is actually quite straightforward, can we say that? But it's less complicated than sideband and CW because you have the information decoding the call signs automatically, so you can literally just click around. But anyway, Don's written a good piece on that, which is available at this web page. Well, this is available after, so you'll be able to access these websites. This is the SO2R setup at Chris Danby's QTH. So this was used for CQ Worldwide CW. It's utilising 2 TS590 SGs. I do like the 590, nice and bright, displays very clear, that's very important. 2 identical radios, not too much going on the front panel, just what you need, you know, bands, noise blanker, RIT, VFO, AF gain. They're the main things. And this is the Micro Kia 2R Plus on the top here. As you can see, it's a bit more complex than the previous model. But this setup works exceptionally well. And the interference between the 2 stations was very, very minimal, actually. This is the setup of Zulu Fox 1 Alpha, operated by N6MJ. This guy's a bit of a monster. He, of recent years, has been active from the Caribbean in CQ Worldwide. A top contester. I've got a huge amount of respect for Dan. He goes around all over the world with these 2 ICOM 7800s. And here he set an amazing CW result, SO2Ring. This is dual CQing SO2, dual running SO2R. We'll have a look at a video of Dan operating in a little while. Remote SO2R, that introduces another whole load of challenges and possible complications. But here you can see a setup that by an operator using two TS480s. Actually, I've got a TS480 on the Kenwood stand, which is connected to a remote rig box, which works exceptionally well. Please come and have a look at the setup. But SO2R, of course, is a bit more complex. Here, using a DX doubler solution. I rather liked that picture in the way it's been set out. So, if you really want to be competing, to be looking at breaking those records, getting the win, getting maybe a top win, top 3 win, then really you need to be doing as much as you can, so minimal receive time. You need to be transmitting as much as you possibly can. So you must make use of that idle time, and that's what this is all about. So the standard SO2R is where you're running on one band, listening on another band, searching around for maybe multipliers, but actually when you're searching around this one, you've got to be working everybody. It's not just the multipliers, you've got to work everyone. So it's a band sweep, working every station you can find. Obviously, SO2R is much more effective if you have another antenna that allows you to listen at the same time while you're CQing. You can use the band map. So the band map is a feature in pretty much every logging program where you can populate a list of call signs by frequency, so that if you find them, you can put them in the band map and come back later. You know exactly where they are. And actually, you can, if you've got it connected to your rig, you can double click on the spot that you've put in the band map, and the radio will go straight to that frequency. You can work him again. Useful if someone's just been spotted on the cluster, for instance. They get hundreds of people trying to call them. You think, oh, I'll come back to him. Come back maybe 30 minutes later, and the QSO's quick. You have to practice. Obviously, there is the debate about if you're working somebody over here, somebody asks here if the frequency's in use, they hear nothing because you're transmitting here, they start CQing on your other run frequency. Now that takes practice to try and minimize your transmissions, making them very quick so that you can maintain two frequencies. Obviously, CQ Worldwide, for instance, is a very busy contest. The bands are full. Some people would see it unfair by utilizing two frequencies at the same time, which is a fair point. I mean, if everybody did that, the bands would be twice as busy. So it is very challenging. CW is a lot more, is a lot simpler to do that, obviously, because the bandwidth is much smaller. The filters come right in tighter. But just making those transmissions nice and quick, minimal information in a contest environment is what makes it work. Okay. So this is a view in WinTest, which uses a secondary window for a second radio entry. So you can see here where you're transmitting and receiving at any one time. You can produce different scenarios, which is all down to operator preference. So the way that I personally operate SO2R is when you're transmitting CW on left radio, I don't need to hear that. I know what I'm sending a message by the key, by the function keys on the keyboard. Don't need to listen to that. Wasted effort. So may as well be listening over here. So when I'm transmitting here, headphones automatically go to receive mode on the other radio, and vice versa. So you actually end up never hearing your own CW at all, because there's not really much point. So this is where you can configure the scenarios. So the transmissions that you pre-program from your F1 to your F7 insert and plus keys, you can change on each radio depending on what you're doing. So if you're running on one and searching on the right, you'd probably want different function messages compared to if you're running on both radios. So you can configure that here. This is an SO2R setup in N1MM+. It also supports SO2V, which is single operator 2 VFO. So where you're using a single transceiver with two VFOs. So that's supported here. And This is the SO2R setup with N1MM+. So you have the two call sign input windows there, and then the two band maps, one for each side. And you can see here that these call signs here this is frequency along here, and the call signs are stacked here depending on where they are on the band. So you can, if you're in the assisted category, that would automatically be populated from the DX cluster, for instance, or RBN, reverse beacon network on CW. Or you can be populating that manually yourself as you go along. If you want to come back to somebody, you can stack them in there. But a double click on those call signs takes you straight there and you can work them. It also means that you can choose to populate these band maps even with QSOs that are duplicates. So if you're tuning around and you work someone, as soon as you work the guy, you log it, it will appear on the band map in a different color, so that when you come back later and you come on the frequency, 90% chance that guy is still the same guy that you've worked, so you don't need to hang around and wait for his call sign. You can just move on. You know you've worked him, more or less. Unless he's, of course, QS wide and somebody else has come on. This is Morse Runner. As I previously mentioned, Morse Runner, excellent simulation tool, and it allows you to use your F1, F2, F3 keys for CQ, exchange information. You can set the CW speed, CW pitch, and you can see just below there on the right band conditions. So you can put QRN, QRM, QSB. You can even put lids in, where you have people coming in out of turn and such like. It's very, very good. And you see there, you see activity on the right. That allows you to select a maximum number of callers at any one time. So I don't know what that goes up to. I think it goes up to 9 or 10 or something, but you can practice having several callers and you pick out call signs. And this is Morse Runner on steroids, so basically dual pile-up practice. So you can run 2 PCs with Morse Runner on 2 machines, and then having a headphone switch, so you're simulating SO2R. This is an example of the highest hour rates in CQ Worldwide CW. So you can see just even over 1 year how it's changed. So 280 in an hour was achieved by TO7A, but N6MJ in the Kamer lines achieved a 371 hour, and this was by SO2R. And if you look at the next one down, you're at 301. So makes a huge difference. And you can see these top guys here were all running dual radios. You can see the single radios are all down here, and the duals are up here. So it's good to practice with Morse Runner to see how long you can keep it going. Shorter CQs are definitely better, because the longer you call CQ over here, the more chance you've got of losing your frequency here, and the more chance you've got of somebody tuning around and missing you. So short CQs, but regular. Yeah, it's better to be spotted less for smaller pile-ups when you're DX. Constant spotting brings a constant pile-up, which actually can reduce your rate quite significantly. So if you've got maybe just 2 or 3 callers for the whole contest, that is the most ideal scenario. Let's move on. So if you're really good at it, the stats show that you can increase your rate by between 20 and 50% if 2 bands are open at any one time. And more often than not, you've got at least 2 bands open at any one time. Important to keep your headphones in stereo mode, of course. It's all about timing, and that comes from practice. Your timing of transmissions and when you transmit, when you receive, which one you go back to, getting into that rhythm of making 2 QSOs at the same time is what it's all about. That takes practice. CQL wide contest, for instance, is a nice contest for SO2R because you don't have to actually receive serial numbers. It's all about zones. For those zones, 9 times out of 10, the logging program will know where the zone is, so you don't have to worry. So where there's a contest where it's not individual information that's unknown, that's where it becomes a little bit more challenging. So CQ Worldwide is actually a good contest to practice this. So I'm just going to show a couple of examples of SO2R, and I'm going to go to YouTube for this. The first one is by K5TR, and this is nice simple SO2R where he's running on the left side, on the right side he's searching. The rate isn't high, so it's a good way of showing how it works. And the text is coming up to show you which radio is on, left or right, and where the audio is coming from. Just see what you think. So he's calling CQ at the moment, but you can't hear it. He doesn't need to hear it, but he is CQing.
Kilowatt 5 Tango, radio. Thank you, 59485.
So he's calling CQ now, even though you can't hear it on radio 1.
Kilo Tango 7 Germany, 59486.
So someone's just called him there.
Thank you, Kilowatt 5 Tango, radio, contest.
Alpha Echo 6 Yankee.
Alpha Echo 6 Yankee, 59487.
Great job, 5-9, number 12.
Thank you, Kilowatt 5 Tango, radio.
So he has a way of switching on his keyboard between band 1 and band 2 because he has a single keyboard. So this is nice, simple, laid-back SO2R.
Victor Echo 7 X-Ray Tango.
B7 X-Ray Tango, 59488.
QSO, you're 595.
Thank you, Kilowatt 5 Tango, radio, contest.
K7 IMA.
K7 Italy, Mike Sugar, 59489.
India November Alpha.
K7 Italy, November Alpha, 59489.
5912.
Thank you, Kilowatt 5 Tango, radio.
Okay, so that shows how he's got pre-programmed CQ messages that he doesn't need to listen to, but he's also searching on another radio and working these guys here on search and pounds.
Kilowatt 5 Tango, radio. Kilowatt 5 Tango, radio.
Okay.
Thank you, 59490.
So now I'll give an example of N6MJ operating CW from the Cayman Islands. Now you won't hear too much of the transmitted CW because, as explained earlier, you don't need to listen to that. But what you will see are these, he's got a lockout, a PTT lockout between the two stations. There are two red LED lights, one on the left, one on the right here. When he transmits on the right radio, the left radio light comes on because it's not available, and vice versa. So you can see that he, in some cases, he's waiting to transmit on the other radio when this light goes out. So he's trying to get a rhythm going of transmissions. See if you can pick up on what's going on. So it's just going from left to right, left to right. So the two QSOs going on at the same time at any one time now. Yeah. 2 different bands. So you can see the amount of time that he's not transmitting is absolutely minimal. Always transmitting. That's how you get a 371 hour. And that for 48 hours. That's all I've got to say on SO2R. Thank you very much for coming. Any questions, please?